Hello everyone, and welcome back to Tarot and Torch. So today we are going to just have a little conversation about January and all of the studies, the decks, and general kind of energy of the month. So January was it was very busy. I don't know if anyone else felt this way. I saw a lot of people talking about having a very slow kind of start to the year, which I kind of wish that I was able to do. I actually had fully intended on things kind of going that way, but they didn't, and that's okay. Sometimes we have these grand plans and they don't quite turn out in the way that we imagine, but there's always a reason for it. And January for me was very foundational. And I say that because I have a lot of big kind of plans, goals, and dreams that have not been, it's not something that's been recently established, but it was kind of always where I was working towards. So January really kind of gave me a more clear direction. And I do feel some of this may have to do with Neptune turning to Neptune going into Aries, out of the sign of Pisces. And for me, anyhow, as soon as that happened, it felt like a fog just cleared for me. And it was one of those moments of, you know what you want to do and where you're heading, so why don't you just do it? So the slow start that I kind of was hoping for, reading and having time to work with all of my decks and really relax, kind of fell by the wayside, unfortunately. So I didn't have time to get a lot of that done, but I did kind of wrap up this book, which a lot of this I had read in December, and then, but I had finished it during January, earlier in January, but it was a fantastic read. So this book, it's called Blood on Her Tongue by Joanna Van Veen. And I just put lotion on, so that's, if you're seeing the smudges, that's what that is. But in any case, this is not for the faint of heart. This is if you really enjoy horror and kind of strange gothic tales. This is, it's in some moments it's kind of disturbing, in other moments it's kind of passionate and romantic and intriguing. So it has a lot of different aspects to it, and it's also a nice big meaty book, which I like. But it was a little bit different even for me. I really love the character development and the way that this author writes in a very kind of lyrical, or maybe not even lyrical, more of a prose style, but it's very poetic in a way, just with the sentence structure and kind of how she writes. And as I mentioned, it's just very intriguing. The imagery chosen and kind of the thought process behind the characters is wild and very much a deeper, darker look at love and connection and loyalty and all of the things that really make any kind of relationship, whether romantic or family relationship, kind of what it is, and how much of yourself that you kind of give or lose in that process as well. And just a very very interesting story, to say the least. And I don't want to give it away because there's a lot of kind of twists and turns with this. It's not straightforward, what happens here. So I won't talk about it too much other than to say I did really enjoy it, and it was something that, kept me entertained, I'll say, during early January. Another thing that I wanted to kind of have more time to do, and didn't really get as much time as I had set out to, was to work with the Call of the Morrigan Oracle, and I did work with it in the beginning of January, and I will continue to work with it because it's very powerful. There's a lot to take in with the Oracle itself, as well as the messages of the Oracle. So this is not something that I can use half-heartedly. This is something I need to really make sure that I have the time, the energy, the bandwidth to absorb and to think about, to chew on, because it's a lot, and I do feel that this is the time for me to work with this deck and the Morrigan, because as what I've noticed is that my energy after the onset of kind of feeling drawn to working with her, my life has started to unfold in interesting ways. And as I've mentioned, I felt this drive to move something forward in my other aspects of my career, specifically. So I feel that what the purpose of me working with her has to do with is that particular feeling, but also, in addition to that, boundary work is very blatantly clear that that's going to be something that I continue to do this year, mainly because of tightening and holding boundaries, not just drawing them. So I have a lot of work cut out for me in many different areas, but in January, this is something that I kind of scratched the surface of. I started this process, became aware of where it is that I'm heading with my work with the Morrigan, and also just defining kind of how, in what way she is presenting in my path right now. So I started to journal, which I won't show you the journaling that I have done, just because that's more personal, but I'll show you the journal itself, which is this raven or crow. And I've been reading this, The Morrigan, Celtic Goddess of Magic and Might by Courtney Weber. So this has been a really, really wonderful companion as I kind of read about the Morrigan and the author's experiences with her as well. So it really kind of breaks down the different aspects of the Morrigan, which, is important to kind of review and to be aware of before working with her in a more extensive way. So there's a lot to this book. A lot of this, the beginning was, just breaking down the different aspects, and then it kind of goes into some history and then her own experiences. But it's a really well done book that, in my opinion, and I really have appreciated her perspective. So I'll continue to read this as well, but this is something that for January, it was good to start the year off with this, to have that kind of direction, to be able to work with her in a way that also matched the alignment of where my path is unfolding. Another deck that I worked with was the Lost Oracle, which this is by Fiona Horn, by the way, and it's by Rockpool. But this deck comes out during specific times. I feel that January was more of kind of a cave month for me, because I was kind of in that dark place, not as in a dark place emotionally, per se, but more so in a dark place of kind of where, what is it that I'm emerging into? And I felt that kind of pull to make that exit as I saw, that light ahead of me of kind of where, drawing me to where I'm now heading. So this deck was just a really nice way to kind of help me to come out of that kind of darker place of not knowing what was pulling me forward, and feeling as though I now kind of have more direction. So it was a nice companion through that, and really matched a lot of the work I was doing with other decks as well. So for instance, I used it a lot with the, let's see, I don't know if YouTube will let me show some of these. I worked with it a lot with the Moonlit Tarot, which I'll be showing in a moment as well. But I loved the colors as well of this, with that kind of illustration, yellow background with the more like etchings of the ink and pops of color. It was really kind of calming in a way to work with it, and really just helped me to feel more grounded. So I worked with that with the Moonlit Tarot, which I did a video on. This is the deck by Chanel Days. It's a beautiful, beautiful deck crafted to work with, that she crafted to work with Hecate. And let's see if I can do a little bit of a pairing moment. Let's see, I'm not the best when it comes to doing these on camera. Let's see, so like this maybe. No, I'm not in the camera. And it's not necessarily the aesthetic that I like about these together. It's more the kind of meaning and the energy of the deck that I enjoy with it. There's a simplicity that this pairing kind of creates for me, and also it's that, that the dark in contrast with some of the lighter images too. So like the black and white here, going with the black and white here, was just really nice as well. But it really just evokes that kind of coming out of the darkness and, emerging into kind of new places, which is kind of where I was energetically. But you can see how well these work together, like this Six of Swords and the furnace. So really nice readings that I was getting from this pairing, and also just to kind of talk about the Moonlit Tarot as I've been working with it. I love this deck so much. It's really, really beautiful. I kind of, knew from the moment that I saw it that it was right for me to work with right now in my life. As I've mentioned, I don't have decks that are dedicated or specifically really evoking Hecate's energy, but I loved working with this deck, and I didn't only work with it for Hecate, which sometimes I will dedicate a deck to deity, but I felt as though she was okay with me using it in other times, because the work that I do with Hecate, a lot of it is psychically driven anyhow, and it also kind of carries over into the work, my profession as a tarot card reader. And so it, a lot of what I do with her is kind of, it blends into my life in different ways, if that makes sense. So when I used this deck, it was more for other kinds of situations as well, not just specifically when I wanted to communicate with Hecate, but it works beautifully for both. And it has that kind of depth to it, but also there is that playfulness and kind of ability to use it for any question and not just the more witchy kind of aspect of my readings. So I really love this deck a lot. I found that the flowers, the moon flowers, create this beautiful softness in the readings as well. I love the Strength card. That really is, Hecate to me. That's her energy. And also another thing that I don't think I'm not sure that I've mentioned, but I work with Hecate also with her pharmacopoeia aspect. So with the plants and the work that she kind of reigns in plant spirit medicine and working with plants in general. So there, with her, Circe and Medea are considered kind of priestesses of Hecate, and some consider them her daughters. But I do a lot of work with plants with Hecate, so the forest imagery also evokes that, but more on that in a moment, because I have been working with plants more recently. But in any case, so I love the fact that there are these flowers, the moon flowers, because, Hecate, she does kind of rule over poisonous plants, but with Circe's path, there's also a lot of healing plants that she governs. So I used this deck in multiple different aspects. This Judgment card just took my breath away when I first saw it. It is divine. So love this deck. Love it. I will continue working with this deck as well. Okay, another deck that I worked with in January a lot was the Wild Unknown Archetypes, and oh my god, I love this deck so much. This deck has so much power to it. Really, just amazing portals open up with this deck. I used it for pairings with other decks. I used it by itself. I journaled around these cards and the archetypes. I really enjoy this deck more than I even thought that I would. So I will be pulling from this deck until further notice. But I really love the energy of it. It has this very magical quality, And yes, the colors and the space kind of in the background and the circular shape all kind of lend itself to that. But it does have this beautiful energy and power to it that can open up a reading in ways that I didn't quite anticipate. So, and it can be used as a clarifier as well, although I would argue that there's a lot of power to it just on its own. But when you do pair it with other cards, it does have this beautiful kind of way of deepening and enriching them more than just a, you know, kind of a regular oracle deck does. So, and again, we have this theme of a lot of black and white with pops of color in it. And I really, this time of year, I feel is one of the best for that kind of color scheme. And something about the backs of these are really satisfying. And I know that it's supposed to be like a diamond and kind of, you know, the facets of it, but something about this is incredibly satisfying, and it's not just because of that. I love looking at it just sitting, you know, on a desk like this. But in any case, back to the discussion about decks. I'm sorry, about herbs and plants. I have the Green Witch's Oracle, which I've had for many years now, maybe even since it came out. Because I remember, yes, I did have this when it first came out, because it was in 2023. So it was shortly after then that I got this deck, and I have always loved this deck. I have multiple herbal and plant decks, and one of these days I'll probably make a kind of a collection video about those. But I'm an herbalist, and I've been kind of continuing to deepen my path with herbalism. I mean, I first had my kind of first herbs and herb books when I was pretty young. I was an odd child and just kind of did a lot of things like reading tarot, but also learning about herbs, plants, and mushrooms. I used to forage for mushrooms, and I actually still do. I take my kids. But with this deck, it kind of helps to relieve some of the lust and the sadness that I feel for plants in my garden when they are covered in snow. I love my garden. I love the plants that I grow. I love going out into the woods. And it's also, you know, continuing to blossom into a deepening of career for me. As I'm already, you know, I already have an apothecary, and it's continuing to become more and more involved, where I'm kind of making more content around it and diving into that aspect of it now. But in any case, this deck really grounds me and gives me these images of plants and gardening and nature, and helps me to feel less kind of sad about it. I mean, I've always appreciated winter for what it gives us spiritually, but there, you know, seeing the plants covered in snow and not growing at the moment is a little hard, and it becomes harder for me every year as I grow older, because I love tending to my plants and growing new plants and harvesting the plants, and just they are more kind of linked to everything that I do, and medicine for my family as well as myself. And just there's medicine in going outside and being in thriving nature that I can't explain. And I do make, you know, as this card comes up, I do make tea, and I have dried herbs that I work with, and don't get me wrong, that's an aspect of natural work and herbalism, but waiting for that springtime to come is something that I never thought I would be so impatient for, but I definitely am. So I've been working with this deck, and there's others that I'll be incorporating for February as well. But yeah, just tapping into these cards sometimes just in the morning to help me get through the winter and see some plants and images that I love has been wonderful. Okay. Okay, another deck that I've loved working with in January is this Dark Fantasy Tarot, and you have seen me talk about this before. This is J. Edward Neal, and I really want to continue deepening my relationship to this deck. It's very... something about it is shadowy, so there is that shadow kind of work aspect. But there's also this elemental aspect that I really love with these cards. And it does have to do with the colors chosen, but also just the energy that the deck has. We have these silhouettes and these kind of primary colors, and these mythical beings and creatures. The aspects of nature that are shown are a little bit kind of withered almost in a way. But I love the overall depictions and perspectives that this deck brings to my readings, to my life. Definitely very infatuated with the deck and kind of the enchanting quality of it. As I mentioned, I also got the other, is it the Lost Souls? No, I forgot the name of it, but the other deck by J. Edward Neal. And this one is the one that ended up being kind of the sleeper hit for me. And it does have more kind of nature energies to it, which could be the reason for that, but also just the enchanting, magical energy that it has, which I love and appreciate, with the fairies and the gnomes, and again, just a different way to work with elemental spirits as well. So I'll continue working with this deck through February. And then we have the Audacity Tarot. The Audacity. So I did an unboxing of this, and I have this love-hate relationship with it. I do enjoy working with it. It's very funny, a little punchy. It's not... part of me likes the artwork, and then part of me, struggles with it. There's moments where I feel like I really want to work with it, and ones that I don't, which is fine. But I have been working with this, and I do, I love the way that it makes things less serious, and I guess that's really what I need. And sometimes the medicine that you want isn't the medicine that you get, and that's really what this deck does for me. So as I pull the cold shoulder, but yeah, it makes me laugh and take things less seriously. So that's really why I work with it. even though it's not, you know, it doesn't kind of always scratch that itch for me when there's something that I really want to dive into or work with on a deeper level. It's nice to have just like, you know, a morning pull with my coffee, to see kind of where I am for the day, and to take things a little less seriously, just as a reminder to kind of laugh and smile at things, and, you know, see a softer kind of color palette too. I'm trying to incorporate more color into my life. I do tend to choose things that don't have as much color in them overall with everything. So I'm trying to slowly incorporate some more color. But anyhow, that's really where I am. Of course, there were other decks that I worked with and kind of other things that I got up to in January, excuse me. But really, I've been very busy. And I continue to be really busy, and I feel that I'm only going to get busier, especially as the spring comes. So this was a month for me of really understanding kind of where the finish line is and what I need to get together, and working very hard in that planning and preparing process, and starting to kind of get my life in that direction. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for being here with me and listening to me ramble, and I hope that you'll subscribe to the channel and that you will be here for future videos that I make, and I will talk with all of you very, very soon.